would like to give an order of the speech, if that's okay. I'm going to start on the case debate, where they made all the case answers. And then I'm going to go to the first counterplan, the quid pro quo counterplan over attribution. And then the counterplan that is military contact. And then the negative disadvantage of offensive cyber operations. It's actually, the off case are in the exact opposite order of the that helps. I'll wait till the negative has not come to terms with U.S.-China cyber policy and the status quo. They have conceded that right now Donald Trump is going to continue U.S. cyber engagement policy, but that will be fundamentally insufficient because China still does not trust the U.S. Our theory is that China is led by nationalist leaders who believe that the United States is trying to sabotage them. This comes in the form of cyber attacks. They don't know who is cyber attacking them, but the plan resolves those things. Only giving China cyber attribution allows them to trust the U.S. again, so that they know that when they are being cyber attacked, it's not coming from the United States. Our evidence explains that China is being cyber attacked by other countries around the world, such as rogue actors and terror groups, but these groups are not the United States. However, China thinks that the United States is cyber attacking them, which means that they retaliate at the United States. Their evidence that says that South China Sea war is unlikely all assumes a world in which China does not continue to think that the U.S. is cyber attacking them. If they continue to think that the U.S. is cyber attacking them, that leads to retaliation on the United States critical infrastructure. They have not responded to the argument that U.S. critical infrastructure, such as our military industrial sector, our nuclear power plants, and other energy grids, are all vulnerable to Chinese critical infrastructure attacks now. Only the plan is able to resolve those things by preventing China from engaging in those cyber attacks. When China engages in those cyber attacks, the United States retaliates to China through kinetic warfare, which leads to an arms race, which causes there to be nuclear weapons usage. That is where the South China Sea comes into play. The negative jumps from no cyber war to there being no South China Sea escalation, but they're missing a few steps in between. South China Sea escalation occurs once the U.S. retaliates to China, which none of their arguments are about, which means that they don't access any defense to the South China Sea scenario. Cyber weapons are not inevitable. It's a matter of our ability to use the weapons to attack each other. Realism is also not applicable. The 1AC Thomas evidence is the most qualified piece of evidence to talk about the theories that different governments engage in terms of international relations in the context of cyberspace. It says that even though China is offensive realist in the abstract in general foreign policy, in cyberspace it's distinct, but that the only thing that's holding China back right now is a lack of attribution capabilities, which takes out all of their indicts of our Thomas evidence. They also say that offensive cyber operations do not undermine cooperation. We agree with this argument. Offensive cyber operations are distinct from what the plan does. Attribution is a form of defensive technology that the United States gives to China to prevent China from continuing to attack the United States. That is what causes the retaliation. Now I'm going to go to the first counter. The first counterplan fundamentally misunderstands how cyber attribution works. The counterplan tries to have China to agree that they will take responsibility for attacks that they cyber attack on the United States before they are given cyber attribution. The entire 1AC, specifically the Herald evidence, who is a senior policy research fellow at the Central Asia-Specific Policy Research Institute, who is the most qualified author to discuss China's motivations in the context of cyberspace and overall U.S.-China relations and foreign policy, says that the only way that China will agree to anything of the sort is if they have attribution technology first, which means those two things can't happen at the same time, which is what the counterplan does. Which means that either China says no to the counterplan, or they say yes to the counterplan, but then they inevitably circumvent it, which means that China would never comply with the actions, and it would still result in the South China Sea escalation that the 1AC explained. The next argument is permutation do both. Do both the plan and offer the counterplan at the same time. Their arguments that it might link to a disadvantage are irrelevant because the disadvantage does not make any sense in the context of the affirmative, as I will explain later. The next argument is permutation do the counterplan. This counterplan is not competitive because the fiated counterplan text fiats that they do the mandate of the act at the same time that they offer that they make China agree to something with the United States. Now, we have evidence that says that China would not want to do this, but this counterplan is still illegitimate. It is a reason to vote affirmative and reject the counterplan in this debate, because they have not provided a reason why reading the affirmative plan text on the negative is a justifiable action and why that is a viable negative strategy. Which takes me to my next argument about conditionality. The negative has read two conditional advocacies in their first negative speech. This is unacceptable because it creates sophistry over advocacy. It makes debates develop too late because we're never able to focus on individual arguments because there's too much breadth in the debate. We should focus on just one counterplan that tests the affirmative strategy versus one strategy that is different than the status quo, or just the affirmative versus the status quo. This is also a reason to reject both the counterplan and the team because it's critical to setting norms. Now, this counterplan also links to their net benefit. I explained that above. It doesn't allow them to resolve this thing. They have an internal net benefit as well. But the plan would resolve this. Their own evidence says the affirmative would result in China admitting its complicity, which resolves the net benefit. And economic decline does not cause war. Jervis, in 11, massive opinion would be the countries that are prospered by impoverished, we would attack out the sharp economic downturn without anyone suggesting that force arms as a solution will not make war unthinkable. This answers their internal net benefit because there is no impact to economic decline because countries will not lash out and get greedy, but rather they cooperate. Go to the next counter. The military counterplan I'm going to spend significantly less time on because this one doesn't make sense. Their counterplan has the People's Liberation Army trying to engage over cybersecurity with the United States. But we have evidence that says that they don't have the authority to do that. That's IGCC in 2012. The Ministry of Public Security is responsible for cybercrime and critical infrastructure protection and has a nationwide network of research labs. Military PLA is also a key player in the civilian sphere. Our argument is that the Ministry of Public Security is the only part of the Chinese government that can deal with foreign policy, which means that the counterplan is not allowed to do the engagement, which means it fundamentally can't do anything. Also, permutation do both, and permutation do the counterplan. Also, the counterplan links to the net benefit. They have a net benefit that's based on Xi, the president of China, trying to pass specific reforms. However, the 1NC cross-ex proves that Xi is already the core leader of China and has consolidated so much power that there's nothing that the plan could do to affect that and derail his overall agenda. They make arguments based on Xi's agenda being critical, but they don't have arguments why the plan affects those things. Now, the 1EC status quo advantage explains that there's already U.S.-China cyber engagement now. This should frame how you look at both the dissent and both counterplans. Their link evidence is about how cyber engagement with the U.S. could hurt Xi's agenda, but that should have already happened. They don't have any evidence that's either more recent or more specific. There are link uniqueness takeouts which disprove the thesis of the dissent, which means that there's no risk of an impact or an internal link. Finally, go to the offensive cyber operations dissent. The fundamental understanding here is that the offensive cyber operations dissent does not make any sense with the affirmative because all the plan does is gives China defensive technology and does not affect the U.S. or China's offensive cyber capabilities. Their disadvantage is based on our capabilities getting comparatively worse than China's offensively, but the plan maintains those. All it does is it establishes what we call mutual drawdown. Our Herald evidence that I referenced earlier indicates that the only way to prevent offensive cyber operations from causing a nuclear conflict in the South China Sea is to give China attribution technology so that no one will attack each other in the first place. They have not made an argument about why there would be attacks other than that. Also, the aft turns a disadvantage. Offensive cyber operations are bad. They create preemptive attacks that cannot prevent escalation, which ensures escalation. The affirmative is the impact of this is the forbearance scenario that Ben read at the beginning of the 1AC. Also, deterrence fails in cyberspace, which takes out the theory of the dissent. First is the Lindsay evidence. Failure of first strike and secrecy ensures misperception. That's Lindsay 15. Cyber attacks do not eliminate the capabilities of an adversary. The covert nature and ease of networking we transfer just eliminating an adversary and cyber retaliatory it would be difficult to try to see the first move advantage but not actually existing contributes to miscalculation. Finally, is absent the plan that spillover causes extinction. That's Biagiani in 10.3. That's of last year. Offensive cyber warfare capabilities in the minds of the states against superpower status grants them a strategic advantage and is rapidly changing the balance of power to their advantage. Information warfare is attracted due to the difficulties of attribution. It's not the exaggeration to say the effects could be no less than a nuclear bomb. When attackers deliver a nuclear bomb on target, there is no certainty of damage.
Okay, I would first like to ask about your Thomas evidence on case. In the conclusion of the article, as we cited in the 1NC, it states that liberalism is adequate for defending what domestic policies in China and the U.S. separately might look like, but that realism is a better frame for evaluating policies between the two. How does the app access that frame of international relations, given that distinction made by your evidence?
Right, so on a more comprehensive read of the Thomas evidence, it indicates that the conclusion can be taken out of context when it doesn't explain that cyberspace is a distinct realm from U.S.-China engagement overall. U.S.-China engagement overall is the realism part that the Thomas evidence is talking about, and indicates that that can spill over into cyberspace once conflicts have already emerged. But if we win that the plan prevents a conflict from emerging in the first place, liberalism, which means that the countries will just engage in cooperative strategies, will dominate the region.
Thank you. The Thomas evidence, to quote it, to understand U.S.-China's cybersecurity relations in their entirety is likely to require an analytically eclectic approach to international relations theory. This seems to support that there is not one theory that can explain cyberspace. How does the app meet that framework?
Well, I think I explained this earlier, that there is not one theory at different stages of escalation between U.S.-China's cyber escalation. Initial status right now is that liberalism dominates it, which means that neither country is willing to go to war because they think it's just a cooperative field for both economic trade and other cooperative efforts. But if that escalates into a protracted, what we call two-front conflict, then things can change.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify your scenario for escalation. It's that China will cyber attack the United States. In response, the U.S. escalates its military presence in the South China Sea, which causes China to escalate its military presence in the South China Sea, sparking the conflict. If not, what does that mean?
Well, that's very close to one of the two ways the conflict emerges. When China misperceives U.S. cyber attacks and then retaliates to the U.S. with cyber attacks, that results in one of two things. First, one of those scenarios is China immediately miscalculates and thinks that the U.S. is trying to overtake them and engage in a nuclear warfare, and they first attack the South China Sea. That's where our little and low threats exist. The other one is that it results in China cyber attacking U.S. critical infrastructure. That's the military infrastructure that I talked about earlier, and that causes the U.S. to be the first one.
What strategic interest compels the United States to take aggressive posture in response to a Chinese first strike in the South China Sea?
They think it's just the first step of China trying to overtake the U.S. in its hegemonic power status as the world's dominant power, which means that the U.S., in order to fight for both its survival and to prevent there from being mass casualties, will strike first to prevent their own population from being wiped out.
I have a further question. Is there any empirical evidence ever of a cyber attack resulting in a kinetic response from the state?
Here's the thing. The first piece of evidence we read that talks about Donald Trump explains that cyber attacks come from different states now, but that Donald Trump is going to continue that engagement policy. However, those cyber attacks will only escalate in this new realm of foreign policy that both Trump and President Xi are engaging. That's the distinction between the empirical examples and the predictive ones.